Some rooms aren't supposed to exist. And when you find them, you realize too late that someone or something left them hidden for a reason. Back in 2019, I was heavy into urban exploration. Old factories, empty malls, forgotten hospitals. I loved photographing places frozen in time. That spring, a couple of friends invited me to explore an abandoned high school in a small Midwestern town. The place had been closed for decades, supposedly due to asbestos and structural problems. But the real draw was all the local stories: kids disappearing, strange noises at night, rumors that the principal was covering something up. We went in through a side door that had long since lost its lock. The air hit us immediately, damped, moldy, thick with dust that clung to your throat. Our flashlights cut across trophy cases filled with cracked glass, faded banners hanging limp from the rafters, and rows of lockers standing like rusted tombstones. At first, it was everything I expected. Empty classrooms with overturned desks, chalkboards still covered with half-raced equations, a gymnasium littered with broken bleachers. Nothing unusual. Nelly, we found the stairs. They weren't on any of the floor plans we'd seen online. It's a narrow flight of concrete steps hidden behind a warped wooden door at the end of a hallway. As one of my friends joked, it looked like a janitor's closet, but when we pulled the door open, the stale air that rushed out smelled different, like rust and earth. And we went down. The basement was colder than the rest of the building, the kind of chill that seeps into your skin. Our beams swept across cinder block walls, pipes dripping with condensation, and then a door, heavy, metal, with a single word painted above it in faded black letters: detention. That stopped us. None of us had ever heard of detention rooms being in basements, especially not behind steel doors. But the handle turned easily, and the hinges screamed as the door swung open. Inside, the room was lined with desks, not ordinary ones. These had metal rings bolted into the legs, with thick leather restraints still dangling. Some desks had scratch marks carved into the wood, long gouges dug deep by desperate hands. The walls weren't any better. Dozens of tally marks, names, please, etched into the concrete like prisoners keeping count. "This isn't real," one of my friends whispered, shining his light across the carvings. "It has to be some kind of prank," but it didn't feel like a prank. It felt wrong. We should have left then. We didn't. While I was taking pictures, my camera caught something strange movement, just a blur in the corner of the frame. I thought maybe it was dust or my shaky hands, but then we all heard it. A chair dragging, the unmistakable screech of metal legs against the floor. Every beam of light snapped toward the sound. Nothing. The desks sat in neat rows, unmoved. But the noise had been real, echoing off the walls. We were rattled, but curiosity kept us there longer than it should have. My other friend spotted a second door at the back of the room, half hidden by a pile of broken desks. A tote, all three of us to shove them aside. Behind it was another staircase, this one narrower, leading even deeper. We only made it halfway down before the air changed again. It grew heavier, carrying the sharp sting of iron, like dried blood. And then came the sound. Children, not laughing, not talking, just soft, steady sobbing. Dozens of voices, overlapping, rising and falling in waves. We froze on the stairs, hearts pounding, flashlights trembling. None of us dared move. Then, as suddenly as it started, the sobbing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound, pressed against our ears, thick and suffocating. That's when we heard the door upstairs slam shut. We bolted, scrambling back into the detention room, our lights swinging wildly across the walls. The desks looked different now, shifted somehow, like they weren't in the same positions as before. I swear I saw fresh scratches that hadn't been there minutes earlier. When we reached the main door, it wouldn't budge. We shoved and pulled, panic rising in our throats, until finally it creaked open with a violent shove. We didn't stop running until we were back outside in the night air, gasping like we'd just surfaced from drowning. Later, back home, I tried to find records of that basement. Blueprints, old articles, anything. But no matter where I looked, the school was listed as having only 2 floors. No basement at all. Here's the part that keeps me awake. When I developed the photos, most came out normal. Empty halls, peeling paint, dust everywhere. But in one of the detention room shots, way in the back corner, was a row of figures. They looked like children. Thin, pale, their faces blurred, heads bent low over their desks. And one of them, just one, was staring straight at the camera. The first sound was a bell. Not a phone, not a door, not a dream, just the sharp, metallic clang of a school bell, echoing through the night when no school should have existed anymore. I should start from the beginning. Last year, I took a solo photography trip across several small towns. My focus was abandoned structures, factories, barns, even hospitals. But the one that always stuck with me was an old brick schoolhouse in rural Pennsylvania. The building had been shut down since the 1970s, left to rot after funding ran out. Its broken windows, weeds sprouting through cracks in the playground, and a heavy chain on the front doorstep was exactly the kind of location I hunted for. I wasn't reckless though. Never broke in, just captured shots from outside. That night, I had rented a small, cheap Airbnb just down the road. I spent the evening sorting through my camera roll, glancing occasionally out the window at the hulking silhouette of the school across the field. Even in the fading twilight, it looked strange, like it was waiting for something. I went to bed early, planning to leave at sunrise for another location. But at exactly midnight, I woke up to the sound of that bell. It was unmistakable. The sharp, hollow clang of a school bell, distant but clear, carried across the night air. For a few moments, I lay frozen, my brain scrambling to make sense of it. I even checked my phone to make sure I hadn't set some bizarre alarm. Nothing. Then, beneath the silence that followed, came something worse. Children, not laughter. Terror. The sound was closer to panicked screaming. It was faint, like a memory carried on the wind. But I swear, I could hear dozens of high-pitched voices crying out, overlapping in chaos. I pressed my face to the window. The school sat in darkness, its windows like hollow eyes, but the sounds seemed to pour from its walls. Every instinct told me to stay put, to lock the door, and wait until morning. Instead, like an idiot, I grabbed my camera, crossing the field. The air felt unnaturally cold, biting through my jacket. My flashlight beam caught fragments of the schoolyard, rusted swings, a toppled slide, a tattered basketball hoop. The screaming faded as I drew closer, replaced by something even more unsettling, soft, muffled crying, like one lone child left behind. The chained doors hung loose, as if someone had tampered with them. A coup. I should have turned back right then, but curiosity pushed me inside. The hallway smelled of mold and dust, the kind of stale air that burns your throat. My footsteps crunched on scattered glass. Classrooms stretched out on either side, desks overturned, scrawled with faded lessons no one had read in decades. And then the bell rang again. The sound exploded through the halls, so loud I nearly dropped my flashlight. It wasn't distant this time. It came from directly above me, vibrating the air, rattling the windows. I wasn't alone. The crying stopped. Silence pressed against my ears. I forced myself to keep walking, camera trembling in my grip. At one point, I raised it and snapped a photo down the hallway. The flash briefly lit the corridors of doors, peeling paint. Nothing unusual, a teen. But when the image appeared on the screen, my stomach dropped. There was a figure, small, child-sized, standing at the very end of the hallway, turned slightly away, as though caught mid-step. When I looked back up, the hall was empty. I don't remember deciding to run, but suddenly my body was moving, my boots slamming against the warped floorboards. I turned a corner and nearly crashed into a row of lockers. They were rusted shut except one. Its door hung open just a crack, and from inside came a slow, deliberate tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't check. A tone. I bolted toward. What I prayed was an exit. The building seemed endless, twisting and shifting in the dark, every hallway blending into another. And then another sound. Children chanting, tasons of voices, low and rhythmic, their words impossible to understand but eerily synchronized. Against every shred of reason, I looked inside. For a second, my flashlight beam cut across the bleachers, and my heart froze. The stands were filled. Row after row of shadowy shapes sat motionless, like a silent audience waiting for the show to start. I blinked, and the bleachers were empty again. The bell rang once more. It's time. It came from directly behind me. I don't remember the details of how I got out tonally, the blind panic, the slamming of doors, the rush of night air when I finally stumbled back into the field. Tina, I didn't stop running until I was locked inside my rental, every light turned on. For the rest of the night, I sat awake, shaking, my camera clutched in my lap. I couldn't bring myself to check the photos until morning. Most were normal shots of walls, hallways, nothing unusual. But that one picture, that single flashlit image of the hallway was in the same as when I first saw it. The figure at the end was no longer turned away. It was facing the camera now, and it was smiling. The smell hit us before the sight did something sharp and sour, like chemicals mixed with decay. And when we pushed that door open, we realized the room wasn't empty anymore. I used to do a lot of urban exploration with two friends of mine, Ryan and Emily. We weren't vandals, just explorers with cameras. Schools were our favorite because they always felt eerily familiar, like stepping into your own childhood, only rotting and forgotten. The school we chose that night had been abandoned for almost 30 years. It sat on the edge of town, swallowed by weeds and trees, its windows busted out and roof half collapsing. Inside, everything was what you'd expect. Dusty lockers, scattered papers, desks stacked in corners. But the one place we couldn't get into was the nurse's office. The door was heavy, metal, with a lock that somehow still held. Someone had spray-painted across it in red, "Keep out." That only made us want in more. At first, we gave up, figuring it was sealed for good. We spent a couple of hours wandering the halls, snapping photos of classrooms, and even braving the gym, which was flooded ankle deep. Nothing happened, no weird sounds, no shadows, just silence. By the time we circled back, it was close to midnight. And that's when Emily noticed the nurse's office door was cracked open. I swear to you, when we'd first tried it, it hadn't budged an inch. Now it stood slightly ajar, darkness spilling through the gap like ink. Ryan thought maybe the rust finally gave way, but something about the timing felt deliberate, like we were being invited in. We pushed the door the rest of the way open. Smell rolled out instantly, burning the back of my throat. Inside, the room was smaller than expected. A desk, a toppled cabinet, A single cot with its mattress torn open. Empty pill bottles and broken glass littered the floor. Nothing unusual compared to the rest of the school. We all felt let down, like we'd built up the mystery in our heads. Emily made a joke about the haunted Band-Aid closet, and we moved on. But later that night, we came back through the same hallway and froze. The nurse's office door was wide open now, and inside, rows of black body bags lay neatly across the floor, at least 6 or 7 of them, lined up side by side, stretching from wall to wall. None of us spoke at first. My flashlight beam shook as I swept it over them. The bags were zipped tight, clean, like they hadn't been sitting there for decades. Some looked full, bulging, as if someone was inside. Swear to God, those weren't here before, Ryan whispered. He was right. We had walked in earlier. Hey, there had been nothing but dust and trash. Right. Now it looked like a morgue. We should have left immediately. But we were frozen, caught between disbelief and dread. Emily edged closer to the nearest bag, her light trembling over the outline beneath the vinyl. What if it's real? She muttered. That's when one of the bags shifted, just slightly, just enough to make the zipper strain against the pressure inside. We all stumbled back at once, hitting the wall behind us. Ryan hissed, "Did you see that?" His voice cracked like a kid's. The silence after was unbearable. My ears rang with it. Then, from the far side of the room, came a faint scraping sound like nails dragging against fabric. One bag, then another. The shapes inside were moving. That broke us. We bolted out of the office, sprinting down the hallway with our lights bouncing wildly off the graffiti and broken tiles. I didn't even care if the floor collapsed under me. I just needed to get out. When we finally burst through the side door into the night air, we didn't stop running until we were back at the car. None of us said a word on the drive home. We didn't need to. The next day, against every instinct, I went back alone. I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe the bags had been some leftover props from squatters or a prank. But when I reached the school, the nurse's office door was shut tight again. Pushed it open. The room was exactly as it had been the first time. Empty. Just the cot, the desk, and the smell of mildew. No bags. No signs anyone had ever been there. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, or some elaborate trick. But later, when I reviewed the photos on my camera, I found one that froze me in place. It was the shot Emily had taken, seconds before we all ran. Rows of body bags lined across the room, just as we'd seen. But in her picture, every single one of them had a bulge at the top round, human-shaped, like heads, tails, and the nearest bag had its zipper open just a few inches wider than I remembered.